My name's Steve, and welcome to Rajapat Songkla MOOC English for the Workplace, Lesson 1, Course 1, Introducing Yourself. Now, do you think first impressions are important? Well, I do, and we want to make them feel comfortable and not robotic. So I'm here to help you practice and improve your greetings and introductions for the workplace. Today, I want to help clarify the understandings between formal and informal language and situations so you know when to choose which. We're going to go through greetings and introductions, some common examples and some uncommon examples that might happen. We're also going to practice introducing others, and finally we'll show you how to create a dialogue for when you have to introduce yourself to a large group and say a few words about yourself. So first, let's start with describing and clarifying the difference between formal and informal situations and languages. So the best way for me to share my understanding for it is to compare the two of them directly. So we have formal in the blue and informal in the gold. Now, we have two because we use them to show respect and to be polite to people who are senior than us or to strangers. When we become more comfortable with people, we use informal language, but we start with formal. So if you look at them directly and you look at examples like greetings or saying your name, notice how informal the words are longer. We say hello instead of hi. We say the full version, my name is, versus I'm. We don't use contractions in formal language. We would say what is instead of what's. And how about you instead of and you. So it's just a longer version way to say things, and it shows respect to people. And if you look at who we use it for, there's examples like your boss, maybe your teacher, someone older like a brother or an uncle or an older sister. And we often use it with customers if you're in business because you want to show respect to them so you can get the sale. And we also use it with strangers when we're getting to know them. Informal and opposite, we use it with friends and family that we know really well and we've known a long time. We use the shorter versions. Sometimes you might even have your own sayings like, hey, yo, what's up, when you're talking to your friends. And that comes naturally over time. So we are talking about the workplace. So my advice would be always be professional. Formal language is polite, and it's more common in the workplace, and you'll see it when people talk to you, more common than informal language. Also, we don't use contractions in formal language, so it's something to practice, because I know you get used to saying things one way, and sometimes it's good to practice not using contractions. And finally, when you're meeting strangers and you don't know what style to choose, whether it's formal or informal, it's always better to start formal and then change to informal later on. So if you start, hi, Mr. Smith, how are you? Oh, I'm Mike, what's going on? And then you know by what they're saying that they're comfortable with using informal, and you can change your style. It becomes a little awkward if you start informal and try to be formal later. So let's start with our second Examples of introductions and greetings. Now, the big difference between introduction and greeting is introduction is done by strangers, people you don't know, and greetings are with people you already know and you're saying hi again for the second or millionth time. So again, introductions for strangers, greetings are for people you know. So let's start with introductions with strangers. And we have typical examples here with formal and informal. We have two people. So in the formal, hello, I am Steve Judge. He gives his first and last name because that's the formal. In informal, the person will only give their first name. Hi, I'm Steven. In English, we don't tend to give away our nicknames, but in Thai, you can do that as well. Like, oh, I'm Steve, but my nickname is, and then you give your nickname. You can see as the second person here, Gary follows the same style in both conversations. So in the formal, A starts formal, Gary continues. Hello, my name is Gary Linton. I'm pleased to meet you. He uses the more formal. And in the informal, he follows the informal. Hi, I'm Gary. Nice to meet you. And so you tend to find people who follow the first initial style and just keep it going. And then you can see the common phrases, long version versus contractions between the two. Now, my personal touch is, especially when you're meeting a lot of new people for the first time, maybe at a convention, it's good to repeat their name. It shows that you're listening and it shows that you're giving importance to them. It's a very simple trick. So we have an example. Hi, I'm Stephen Judge. What's your name? Oh, hello, I'm Gary. It's nice to meet you, Stephen. Gary repeats my name. It helps him remember my name and also shows that he's listening to what I'm saying, which is a really good trick to remember people's names. And if you notice in this example, Gary changes. I started formal in A and Gary went informal. And so my response to Gary in the last one, it's nice to meet you too, Gary. I don't say his last name because I'm following his style. He's let me know he's informal just by telling me his first name. He could have told me his last name, but he decided not to because he wants to be informal. Now, this is a common thing to do, which we call going off script. We have the hello, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, and the robotic. But often people do things that they don't expect and ask you questions in the middle of a conversation. And it shouldn't be something you're scared of. It's actually a good sign showing that they're interested in you. So we have example here, hello, I'm Steve Judge, trying to shake hands. And the person says, hi, I'm Gary. So Steve, and he could ask me any question that he can think of. And here are some common examples. So where are you from? What do you think of our company? How are you liking it so far? How are you doing? And this shows that Gary's interested in me and asking me for my opinion and how I feel, which is a good sign. Now, the questions, where are you from? Someone might ask you if you're traveling abroad and you're outside, and so they're just trying to place you geographically. If you're new to a company, someone might ask you, what do you think of our company? So what's your experience? How do you feel about it? How are you liking it so far? Is the same type of question as what do you think of our company, but it's more informal and it's the same idea. It's how you feel. And finally, you have how are you doing, which is how do you feel? Are you getting okay? So how are you type of question. Now, that's your introductions. Now let's look on to greetings. So we have two greetings, formal and informal. Again, greetings are between people who are familiar, they know each other. So we have the formal, good afternoon, Mr. Lin, how are you today? Now, informal, we often use Mr., Mrs., Miss, and the last name instead of first names. And so the response, hello, Mr. Judge, I'm good, thank you, and how are you? And again, the longer language, no contractions. Now, if you look at the informal, hey, Gary, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good, and you? Not bad. A very short and sweet conversation. Has the same, but it doesn't have the formal politeness that you get in formal language. Again, going off script, we have, hey Gary, what's new? Nothing much, Steve. What have you been up to? So we were looking at previous conversations where people ask, and you, how about you, and asking the same question. There's a chance when you know people that they can ask you a completely different question. Now, what's new and what have you been up to are very similar in meaning. What's new is there anything exciting or anything interesting new in your life? What have you been up to is a question about maybe it's been a long time since you've seen each other, and they want to know the history up until now, any changes in your life. But they're very similar. One kind of indicates that you haven't seen each other for a long time. We also have some examples like, oh, how was your weekend? A common question you get on Monday at the workplace. You say, everybody, hey Jim, how are you? How was your weekend? On a Monday morning, and you had, oh, I didn't do anything, or maybe they just tell you what you did on the weekend, your plans. Or how's it going? Just question, it's the same question as how are you, but it's a more informal way to say how are you. Now, we're not always introducing ourselves. Sometimes we have to introduce other people. So conversations aren't just usually A and B. Sometimes they're A, B, and C. There's 3 people involved. And you might have to introduce someone, or you might be the person introduced. So we have, again, formal and informal conversations. So example, we'll start with formal. Hello, Gary. I'd like to introduce you to Namo. She's new to the company. So people often give a little bit of information about the person they're talking to. And then person B would turn to Namo and say, hi Namo, it's a pleasure to meet you, or it's nice to meet you, or welcome aboard. So we have very warm welcome from person B, and then Namo would respond, oh, hi Gary, it's nice to meet you too. So we have very formal. Informal way, we have, hey Gary, have you met Namo? Or do you know Namo? 2 common questions that you would ask someone to do the introduction. So where you're like, oh, I'd like to introduce you to. Here you just ask a question and make it into a question. And the person's like, no, I haven't. And then that person would go, oh, this is Namo, and give extra information. And they do the same greeting, nice to meet you too. And it's very straightforward. Okay, let's move on to our final topic, introducing yourself to a group. This is probably the one that makes everyone nervous because it's public speaking. Even though it's really short, it still can be kind of stressful. And it's when someone turns to you and says, why don't you say a few words about yourself? So you have to get up in front of strangers that you don't know, and you have to say, and I know in school we practice the, hi, my name is, I'm from, and you, but you don't want to be robotic and do that kind of presentation. You want to be natural and show that you're confident, and you're trying to think of what information should you share. Well, I have a couple of useful tips for you about that. Now, first, a good introduction to a group will combine important information about yourself with interesting information. So it will get people to know you and like you. So let's start off with ideas of important information. You don't want to give all of them and make it like you're giving a list, but here's some important information. Your name and maybe your nickname, your age, not necessarily always important. But if you're in some countries like Korea or Japan where age is important for showing respect, you might just say that so they know how to treat you. We also have hometown or province. Maybe you're working in Chiang Mai and you like want to say you're from the south. It's useful information. Maybe it's in a school setting and you want to tell them what you're studying, what your major is. Or maybe it's a work and you want to tell them your experience in that field. Or maybe it's an athletic and you want to tell them like how long you've been doing the sport. So it's any group environment. And these are some important information that you can share with the group. So some of the ideas of past experience that you can give. So I'm looking at the work-wise. You can do past tense. So I used to be sales representative for Acme Products. That means you were the sales representative, but you're not anymore. It's a new job now. You no longer do the job. You could also give experience, then give them the history. So I've been a customer service representative for Vendela Industries for 10 years. That's present perfect. So that's from the past 10 years ago up to now. So you're still doing that job. So it just shows your experience in that field. We also have two examples here under current where like, oh, I'm the project manager here at Gringotts, or I'm new to the umbrella corporation. So these are just, it doesn't talk about the history, just where you are now in your career. So you can choose whether you want to talk about your past, whether you want to talk about your history, or if you want to just talk about your present experience. And these are all useful. So I'm new, I've been, I used to be. These are all very good, useful phrases for talking about your work experience. Now, after you give some information, talk about your experience, we often have what I call closing comments, or final statements you give at the end of your introduction. Common, it's nice to meet everyone, or very lovely, oh, it's lovely to meet everyone. And sometimes people do say that at the beginning before, hi, it's nice to meet everyone, I'm Steve, and then so it can be said at the beginning and the end. I'm looking forward to working with everyone if you're at the workplace and it's your first day of work. Or just feel, oh, I'm excited to be here, sharing your feeling and enthusiasm. I'm honored to be a member of a team. So if maybe it's a new group that's formed or a committee and you're part of it and you're showing that you're taking responsibility and you're excited. Or maybe you're just, oh, I hope to be successful, or I hope we are successful if you're working on a project. And it's just a final positive end to the note to show that everybody, you're excited and you're a team player. how these look when you put them together. So I made a one for myself. No. Hello, my name is Steve Judge. I'm an English teacher at Rajabhat University in Songkhla, and I've been a teacher for 10 years. I'm very glad to meet you all, and I'm excited to get started. So we have a very formal introduction, and I talk about my current situation, as long with my history. I've been a teacher for 10 years. So I've actually had two parts of my history in there, my experience. And then my closing statement I've used too. I'm very glad to meet you all, and I'm excited to get started. So you can also double up some of the information that you want to do. So you don't have to just do one, and one. You can do 2 and 1. You can create your own sentences and use it. But use that format. Usually interesting information, experience, and then closing statement. Here we have a student example. Hi, I'm Julie. I'm a second-year student at Rajabhat. My major is business management. I'm looking forward to working with everyone. So we have informal, and we have some information about her. She's a second year, and that she's a business major. And then a closing, I'm looking forward to working with everyone. Now, within this course, we talked about formal and informal language and situations and how to identify and which one to use. We went through common and off-script examples of introductions and greetings and how to handle those. We covered introducing others, and finally we worked on how to introduce yourself to a group. Now, after this, you'll be asked to answer some questions. We'll test your knowledge and help practice the information in this video. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.